afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another PropagandaFields from your host, Imperial Dane. We're off here to have a look at Vaux Farmlands. Yes, indeed, a 2 versus 2 map here. Somewhat bigger, and that's sort of what we covered here. And of course, also with some slightly different sort of ideas on how to approach the map. I mean, overall, one thing to sort of notice about Vaux Farmlands is it's a very open map. I mean, it's, fields. So there's a lot of sort of large open territory separated by ditches, roads, a few fences here and there. But overall, there's a lot of sort of open ground of things and sort of catch a lot of troops. And there's of course also points where they then sort of ability to sort of quickly make your way across and sort of sneak and hide and all that. But overall, it's very much open ground. Also in terms of, again, how flying tends to sort of center around, it does tend to sit partly in the center, but also the north. The north and the center, partly due to sort of, being a bit more closed off. There's more trees here sort of covering. The fields are smaller and other things like that. Plus, things up here is a bit more easily closed off compared to the south, and overall it does see more action, whereas the south tends to be more harassed territory. Sort of smaller engagements overall, rarely anything deeply serious unless someone, say an Oberkommando player, parks down, and even then again sort of north center tends to be sort of where most of the action gravitates towards. In terms of buildings, there's sort of a mixture of large buildings can sort of cover a lot of sites, probably with infantry in, and then a bunch of much smaller sheds and other buildings where there's not really much more to be done. For example, this one though has a rather dominant position, lots of windows, but also note there's actually a back door here. A lot of players do tend to neglect that. Otherwise, for example, most of the village has all these small buildings with basically what amounts to one door, so that means you have to be a bit careful about getting into them, otherwise you could risk sort of getting knocked out with a quick grenade or caught there on retreat. So those are some things to consider. There's a building here, but generally that won't see much usage. These two buildings are sort of a bit more important. Again, they sort of cover here. This one's reasonably sort of good for covering here. Not so much for here in this building. Well, not really much. What these two buildings do tend to get used for, sort of a lot of, infiltration. That is, Fallschirmjägers, partisans, stormtroopers, Jaegers, you name it, they'll pop up here and sort of try to harass and draw away forces. I mean, that's something you do have to be careful about. There's of course also a little detail here. You can actually sneak around here, but generally most players just sort of tend to go here and not so much around here, and maybe sort of sneak up, or I don't know, break through there and cause some hammocks. I mean, there are some options down south, but again, it tends to be sort of a lot more harassed territory to sort of keep in mind. There's also the shed over there, which doesn't really serve much purpose besides, well, basically serving as an infiltration point for units. So that is something to keep in mind. Of course, all the roads here also serve as sort of a large barriers of negative covers. There's sort of, the roads also sort of serve as a nice natural barrier. We can sort of try and catch a lot of units up and then sort of cut them down. So that's also something to wear off. And it's actually something you can sort of try, sort of fortify the barbed wire, turning it into sort of a lot more nasty obstacles. I mean, try to sort of mix barbed wire with negative cover, sort of force your opponent to be longer out in it, not so easily able to cross on. You can actually sort of do some nice damage. This also serves sort of a natural machine gun nest up here, though again you might want to barbed wire to sort of cover up some of the angles so you can't sort of be so easily rushed. When you can keep that in mind, you'll generally do well. But also, of course, the way the sort of map is nice open also opens up for a lot more armor tactics and armor flanking. So this is a really good tank map. If you sort of, again, break through sort of the road here, and maybe the buildings here, or sort of take a longer path around here, sort of outflank your opponent if he's got some nasty position. I mean, so in that regard, it's also a good map for that, and it's also very important to keep in mind. I mean, again, you sort of want to keep vital junctures where your opponents are more likely to use armor to sort of keep their mind up. So, for example, he can't easily conduct a breakthrough because if he first gets behind you with tanks, you could be in a bit of trouble, and that applies both sides. I mean, again, once tanks out here, it's going to be very difficult to sort of slow them down because there's no natural obstacles or anything to sort of really hold them back, and that can cause you quite a bit of harm if well handled by your opponent. So, very much keep that in mind. Also here, good spots for mining, booby traps and whatnot, demo charges, a bit the same here. I mean, overall, the roads here, good for mining, in particular the junctures, like here, 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 and this spot, in particular this area, in fact, is very good for mining. I mean, try and keep those things in mind as much as possible. Beyond that, there's not really so much otherwise to say. I mean, again, it's a sort of dominantly open map. Again, favours aggressive, swift movements with vehicles and armour. With infantry here in this map, you generally want sort of half tracks or something else, sort of keep them reinforced in the front, because otherwise you can end up wasting a lot of time running back and forth. So that is a good suggestion there for those players to sort of try and negate that somehow. so you don't end up wasting so much time, in particular around the southern and northern points, where it can also end up taking quite a bit of while. In particular, the southern point is rather far removed, which is also why it tends to see a lot more harassment going down here, because it is sort of one of the furthest away points, and again, you're just not going to see any sort of protracted engagement down there. It's a little thing there to keep in mind as well. But overall, I think that sort of largely covers the Vaux farmlands. Again, a lot of fighting sort of tends to gravitate here. Good tank map, you sort of know how to handle the open terrain, in particular through the south. Again, the open is a lot more closed off, which also makes it sort of more naturally gravitate for sort of one of the heavier fighting, because it's easier to just lock down for some players. And the centre here can also sort of be a bit of a centre there of trench warfare, if you will. So, hopefully with that, people have a slightly better idea of Vaux farmlands and how to get the most out of it. If you did, why not subscribe, tell your friends, share with everyone. If not, you know, that's quite unfortunate. But otherwise, there'll be other propaganda fields up in the near future. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers, and thank you all for watching. Bye!